The massive ships appeared in Earth's solar system without warning. They were unlike anything humans had ever seen before. The vessels stretched for miles, their dark metal surfaces covered in strange symbols that seemed to glow with their own light. There were 12 of them, each one bigger than Earth's largest cities. Admiral Sarah Chen stood in the command center of Luna Base, watching the alien fleet through the massive viewing screen. Her hands gripped the metal railing so tight her knuckles turned white. Around her, dozens of technicians worked frantically at their stations trying to understand what they were seeing. "Ma'am, they're sending a message," reported Lieutenant Park, his voice shaking slightly. "It's coming through on all frequencies. Put it through," Chen ordered. The screen filled with the image of a creature that looked like a cross between a fish and a lizard. Its skin was blue-green and seemed to shimmer like water. Large dark eyes stared out from an elongated head, and when it spoke, rows of sharp teeth became visible. "Greetings, primitive inhabitants of the third planet," the creature said. Its voice was translated by some kind of universal device, making it sound cold and mechanical. "I am Ambassador Veltar of the Morden species. I speak for the Galactic Council, the rightful rulers of this galaxy." Chen felt her stomach drop. First contact with aliens, and it was starting like this. "Your species has been observed expanding beyond your home world," Veltar continued. "This expansion has brought you to the attention of the Council. We are here to inform you of your new status within our domain." The ambassador gestured with one of its webbed hands, and the screen split. On one side remained the alien's face, while the other side showed images that made Chen's blood run cold. Planet after planet appeared on the screen, all of them nothing but burned, lifeless rocks floating in space. "These worlds once housed civilizations much like yours," Veltar explained without emotion. "They chose to resist the Council's authority. As you can see, their resistance was brief and pointless. The images changed, showing different planets. These ones were alive but clearly under alien control. Strange ships moved through their skies, and the cities below looked nothing like what humans would build. These worlds chose wisdom," the ambassador said. "They accepted their place in the galactic order and now enjoy the protection and guidance of the Council." Chen exchanged worried glances with her staff. This was going exactly as badly as their worst-case scenarios had predicted. "The terms of your submission are simple and non-negotiable," Veltar announced. "You will surrender 40% of all resources produced by your species. This includes metals, energy sources, food, and manufactured goods. You will also provide 30% of your population to serve as workers in Council territories. These individuals will be well treated, and their service will benefit the greater galactic community." The alien paused, as if expecting this generosity to be appreciated. "Finally, your governments will be dissolved and replaced by Council-appointed administrators. Your military forces will be disbanded and your weapons will be surrendered. Any technology you have developed will become property of the Council for proper evaluation and distribution." Chen felt sick. They were talking about the enslavement of humanity like it was a business transaction. "You have one standard galactic day to consider these terms," Veltar said. "Though I should mention that in the 10,000 years of Council expansion, no species has ever required the full day to make their decision. Most see the wisdom of cooperation within the first few hours." The screen showed more images now, dozens of different alien species, all bowing before creatures that must have been Council members. The message was clear. Everyone submits to the Council. Representatives of your governments are invited aboard our flagship to formalize the surrender, the ambassador continued. "We have studied your species and understand you have multiple governmental systems. We will accept representatives from your major population centers." Chen realized they had been watching Earth for some time. The aliens knew about human governments, human cities, maybe even human military capabilities. This wasn't a first contact. This was the conclusion of a long study. "Do not make the mistake of believing your primitive weapons pose any threat to Council forces," Veltar added, as if reading her thoughts. "Your nuclear devices are crude by galactic standards. Your space vessels are barely capable of interplanetary travel. Your energy weapons are non-existent. Resistance would only result in unnecessary destruction." The images on the screen changed again, showing what must have been Council weapons. Beams of light that could slice through mountains. Ships that could destroy entire fleets with single shots. Ground troops in armor that made them look like walking tanks. "However, the Council is not without mercy," the ambassador said. We understand that primitive species often react with fear when first encountering their betters. This is natural and expected. We do not wish to punish you for your ignorance. Chen gritted her teeth. The condescending tone was almost worse than the threats. The Council has brought order to thousands of worlds and hundreds of species. Veltar continued. Under our guidance, wars have ended. Resources are distributed efficiently, and all beings know their proper place in the galactic hierarchy. Your species will benefit greatly from this structure. The screen showed alien cities that were clearly advanced beyond human imagination. Towers that reached into the clouds, transportation systems that moved without any visible means of propulsion, and technology that seemed almost magical. Your planet's location makes it valuable as a resource gathering point, the ambassador explained. Your species shows adequate intelligence for basic labor tasks. Your physical capabilities are sufficient for the work that will be required. This is fortunate, as many species we encounter are suitable only for the most basic tasks. Again, the casual way the alien discussed human slavery made Chen's hands shake with anger. We will establish administrative centers in your major population areas, Veltar said. Council engineers will begin resource extraction operations immediately following your surrender. Your people will be educated in proper protocols for interaction with Council citizens and workers. The message was winding down, but the alien had one more thing to say. I should mention that delay in accepting these terms will be viewed as resistance, Veltar stated. The Council has never had to demonstrate our resolve twice to the same species. The choice is simple. Accept your place willingly or be forced into it after watching your cities burn. The screen went dark, leaving the command center in stunned silence. Chen looked around at her staff. Every face showed the same mixture of fear, anger, and disbelief. They had always known that first contact might not go well, but this was beyond their worst nightmares. Get me connected to the World Council immediately, Chen ordered, and send word to all military commands. Tell them to prepare for the emergency protocols we discussed. As her staff hurried to carry out her orders, Chen stared out at the alien fleet, 12 massive ships hanging in space like a death sentence over humanity's future. The aliens were so confident they hadn't even bothered to position themselves defensively. They were just waiting for humanity to surrender. The ambassador had said no species had ever taken a full day to surrender. Chen wondered if any species had ever taken a full day to prepare for war instead. She guessed they were about to find out. The next 24 hours would determine whether humanity would bow down or stand up. Either way, the galaxy was about to learn something new about the species from the third planet. 23 hours had passed since the Council's ultimatum. In meeting rooms across Earth, government leaders had argued, planned, and made the most important decision in human history. Now representatives from every major nation sat in the Great Assembly Hall of the United Nations building in New York. Secretary General Chen Wei stood at the podium, looking out at the faces of her fellow humans. Behind her, the massive screen showed the alien fleet still hanging motionless in space above Earth. The ships had not moved, had not communicated further. They were simply waiting. Ambassador Veltar and his delegation had arrived at the UN building an hour ago. The alien creatures filled the guest section of the assembly hall, their strange forms a stark reminder that humanity was no longer alone in the universe. The Mordoon ambassador sat in the center, his blue-green skin glistening under the lights. To his left sat creatures that looked like walking crystals, their faceted bodies clicking softly as they moved. These were the Construct, a species made of living silicon and metal. On Veltar's right perched bird-like beings with brilliant feathers and sharp beaks. The HFY were clearly predators, their eyes constantly scanning the room for threats. Behind them sat other alien species, each stranger than the last. All of them watched the humans with expressions that ranged from boredom to mild curiosity. Chen Wei had been chosen to speak for humanity because of her diplomatic experience and her ability to remain calm under pressure. She would need both qualities now. The weight of 8 billion human lives rested on what she was about to say. Honored representatives of the Galactic Council, she began, her voice carrying clearly through the hall's sound system. We have considered your proposal carefully. Veltar leaned forward slightly. The other aliens seemed to straighten in their seats. This was the moment they had been waiting for. In 10,000 years of galactic expansion, this moment had always gone the same way. We understand the power you represent, Chen Wei continued. We have seen the images of worlds that chose to resist your authority. We have also seen the worlds that chose to submit to your rule. The human delegates sat perfectly still. They all knew what was coming next. The decision had been made in those closed-door meetings, debated fiercely by presidents and prime ministers, generals, and advisors. But in the end, the choice had been unanimous. We acknowledge that your technology is more advanced than ours, Chen Wei said. We recognize that your fleets are larger and your weapons more powerful. We do not dispute these facts. Veltar's expression remained neutral, but Chen Wei thought she detected a hint of satisfaction in his large, dark eyes. The alien ambassador was hearing exactly what he expected to hear. The primitive humans were about to surrender, just like every other species had done. However, Chen Wei said, and the single word seemed to echo through the hall like a gunshot. The aliens stirred slightly. The word, however, was not typically part of a surrender speech. After careful consideration of your terms and extensive discussion among the representatives of our species, we have reached a decision. Chen Wei paused, looking directly at Ambassador Veltar. She could see her own reflection in his large dark eyes. Behind her, she knew 8 billion humans were watching this moment on screens across the world. In space above, the alien fleet waited for her words. Our answer is no. The silence that followed was complete. Not a single sound could be heard in the assembly hall. The aliens sat frozen, their various sensory organs focused on Chen Wei as if they had not heard correctly. Ambassador Veltar blinked slowly, his nictitating membranes sliding across his eyes like shutters. He turned to one of the construct representatives, its crystalline head reflecting the lights in strange patterns. The living machine emitted a series of electronic sounds that must have been their language. One of the HFY delegates ruffled its feathers and made a sharp chirping sound. Its beak opened and closed several times as if it were trying to speak, but no words would come out. I'm sorry, Veltar said finally, his mechanical translation device making his voice sound even more artificial than usual. Could you repeat that? Our translation systems may have malfunctioned. Chen Wei did not smile, though she felt a grim satisfaction at the alien's confusion. I said no, Ambassador. Humanity rejects your terms. Veltar stood up from his seat, his movements causing small waves of motion through the water-filled suit he wore. This is not possible. No species has ever refused the Council's initial offer. Well, Chen Wei replied calmly, there's a first time for everything. The alien ambassador looked around the hall as if searching for some explanation for what he was hearing. His eyes fixed on the human delegates, all of whom sat quietly in their seats, their expressions serious but determined. You do not understand, Veltar said, his voice rising slightly. This is not a negotiation. These are not terms you can refuse. This is the way things are done in civilized galactic society. Perhaps, Chen Wei said, but we are not yet part of your civilized galactic society. And frankly, after seeing your terms, we're not particularly interested in joining. One of the construct representatives began emitting a steady stream of electronic sounds. Its crystalline body flashed with patterns of light that hurt to look at directly. The universal translator struggled to keep up with the rapid communication. The construct collective is indicating that this response falls outside all known parameters, Veltar said, seeming to listen to the machine language. They have analyzed the behavioral patterns of over 3,000 species. None have exhibited this response pattern. Then I suppose we're going to be an interesting case study, Chen Wei replied. A HFY delegate suddenly screeched something in its own language, its feathers standing on end like an angry bird. Veltar turned to listen, then looked back at the humans with what might have been the beginning of concern. Admiral Kreksoth wishes to know if you understand what you are saying, the ambassador translated. He reminds you that resistance has never succeeded against council forces. Chen Wei nodded seriously. Please tell the Admiral that we understand perfectly what we are saying. We are saying no to slavery. We are saying no to the theft of our resources. We are saying no to the dissolution of our governments and the surrender of our freedom. She paused, then added, and we are saying no to the idea that might makes right in this galaxy. The aliens began communicating rapidly among themselves in their various languages. The sounds filled the hall, electronic beeping from the constructs, chittering from insectoid species, growling from predatory races, and the water-distorted speech of the Morden. Veltar raised one webbed hand for silence. When the noise died down, he spoke again, and for the first time his voice carried a hint of uncertainty. "You must reconsider this decision," he said. "The consequences of defying the Council are severe. We do not wish to see your species suffer unnecessarily." Chen Wei straightened her shoulders. "Ambassador, our species has been suffering, fighting, and surviving for hundreds of thousands of years. We've faced ice ages, plagues, wars, and disasters that would have wiped out weaker civilizations. We're still here." She gestured toward the screen showing the alien fleet. "You offer us slavery disguised as protection, theft disguised as tribute, and conquest disguised as civilization. We've seen real civilization, Ambassador. We've built it ourselves, imperfect as it may be, and we're not willing to trade it for your version." The alien delegation sat in stunned silence. This was clearly not going according to any plan they had made. "This is your final answer?" Veltar asked. "This is our only answer," Chen Wei replied firmly. "No." As the aliens filed out of the assembly hall, their various forms moving with what looked like confusion and growing alarm, Chen Wei remained at the podium. She watched them go, knowing that humanity had just made the most dangerous decision in its history. But as she looked out at the faces of her fellow humans, she saw no regret, only determination. They had chosen freedom over safety, resistance over submission. Now they would see if courage was enough to back up that choice. The word no had been spoken. Now came the hard part. Admiral Kreksoth of the HFY paced back and forth across the bridge of the Council flagship. His talons clicked against the metal floor with each step, and his brilliant red and gold feathers were ruffled with agitation. Around him, representatives from the 12 Council species worked at various stations, but their attention kept drifting to their frustrated admiral. "This makes no sense," Kreksoth squawked, his translator converting his harsh bird language into the common galactic tongue. 10,000 years of expansion and not one species has ever said no to our initial terms. Not one. Ambassador Veltar floated in his water-filled command pod, his blue-green skin darker than usual with stress. "The humans appear to be different than our models predicted, Admiral." "Different?" Kreksoth spun around to face the aquatic diplomat. "They're not different, they're insane. Did they not see the images of destroyed worlds? Did they not understand the consequences of defiance? One of the Construct Collective, a towering crystalline being designated as Processing Unit Zeta-9, emitted a series of electronic tones. The sounds translated as, 'Analysis of human psychological profiles indicates a species with unusually high tolerance for risk. However, their technological capabilities remain within expected parameters for a Level 2 civilization.'" Kreksoth's beak snapped open and closed in frustration. "Level 2 civilizations don't refuse Council authority. They barely have interplanetary travel. Their most powerful weapons are crude nuclear devices that couldn't scratch our ship hulls." The bridge fell silent except for the soft humming of alien technology. Through the massive viewing screens, Earth hung in space like a blue and white marble, seemingly defenseless against the 12 massive ships surrounding it. "Perhaps," suggested Veltar carefully, "we should contact the Council Central Command for guidance. This situation is unprecedented." "Unprecedented," Kreksoth screeched. "It's a minor anomaly. These humans are behaving irrationally, but that doesn't change the fundamental reality of the situation. They have no choice but to surrender." Processing Unit Zeta-9 flickered with internal light patterns. "Admiral, our databases contain complete analyses of human military capabilities. Their largest naval vessels displace less than 100,000 tons. Their aircraft are limited to atmospheric flight. Their space-based weapons are non-existent. The probability of successful resistance is calculated at 0.03%. "Exactly." Kreksoth's feathers brightened with satisfaction. "They simply need a demonstration of our seriousness. Once they see what happens to those who defy the Council, they'll come to their senses quickly enough." Veltar's large eyes blinked slowly. "What kind of demonstration did you have in mind, Admiral?" Kreksoth strutted over to the tactical display, where a three-dimensional map of the local solar system rotated slowly. With one talon, he pointed to a small dot beyond the orbit of the outermost planet. "Here," he said, "Proxima Centauri. Our intelligence reports indicate the humans have established a small research station there. 50,000 inhabitants, mostly scientists and support staff. The other council representatives gathered around the display. Veltar's expression remained neutral, but his skin pattern shifted slightly, a sign of unease among his species. "You want to destroy a civilian target?" the ambassador asked. "I want to provide a lesson in galactic realities," Krexoth replied firmly. "These humans clearly don't understand the consequences of their decision. We'll destroy their little outpost, transmit the images back to Earth, and then ask again if they'd like to reconsider their answer." Processing Unit Zeta-9's crystalline head rotated to focus on the Admiral. This approach has proven effective in 97.3% of previous encounters with resistant species. Recommended force deployment: 1 heavy cruiser, standard bombardment configuration, see? Krexoth spread his wings in a gesture of vindication. Even the constructs agree. This is standard operating procedure. We show them what defiance costs, they surrender, and we can all get back to the normal order of business. The various alien species began murmuring agreement in their different languages. This was familiar territory, a small demonstration of power followed by immediate capitulation. They had done this hundreds of times before. "I'll take the Talon's Edge," Krexoth announced, referring to his personal command ship. "A quick strike, complete destruction of the facility, and we'll be back here within 6 standard hours." Veltar remained silent for a moment, then nodded slowly. "Very well, Admiral. But perhaps we should inform Earth of our intentions first? Give them one final chance to surrender before we act?" "Absolutely not," Krexoth snapped. "That would defeat the purpose. The lesson only works if they see the consequences without warning. Let them think their defiance comes without cost. Then show them how wrong they are." As the council representatives dispersed to prepare for the demonstration, none of them noticed the small device that had been quietly recording their conversation. Hidden among the bridge's many alien technologies, the human-built listening device had been planted during the diplomatic meeting on Earth. On Earth, in a bunker deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, General Marcus Webb listened to the aliens' conversation through an encrypted communication link. Around him, military commanders from every major nation watched tactical displays showing the movement of ships in the solar system. "They're going for Proxima," Webb announced to the room. "1 ship, standard bombardment approach. They think it's going to be easy." President Martinez of the United Earth Council leaned forward in her chair. "How long do we have?" 6 hours until they reach the system," Webb replied. "Maybe less if they push their engines. And our people at Proxima?" Webb's expression was grim but determined. "They're ready, ma'am. Operation Hornet's Nest is a go." On the Council flagship, Admiral Krexoth settled into the command chair of the Talon's Edge. The heavy cruiser was an impressive vessel by galactic standards, 3 miles long, armed with plasma cannons that could level cities, and protected by energy shields that had never been breached by any weapon in recorded galactic history. As the ship moved away from Earth toward the Proxima Centauri system, Krexoth felt confident that this small demonstration would end humanity's foolish resistance. In his 10,000 years of service to the Council, he had overseen dozens of such operations. The pattern was always the same: show them what defiance costs and they immediately see reason. "Time to Proxima Centauri?" he asked his navigation officer. 5 hours, 43 minutes at current speed, Admiral." "Excellent. Send a message to the fleet. Tell them to prepare for the human surrender transmission. I expect we'll be returning to Earth with their formal submission before the day is over." As the Talon's Edge traveled through space toward what its crew believed would be an easy target, Krexoth reviewed the intelligence files on human capabilities one more time. Primitive chemical rockets, crude nuclear weapons, basic energy production. The idea that such a backward species could pose any threat to a Council warship was absurd. He had no way of knowing that 50 light-years away, at Proxima Centauri, the small research station was already tracking his approach. The facility that Council intelligence had dismissed as a minor scientific outpost was powering up weapons, systems that shouldn't have existed. According to every calculation the aliens had made, the humans had been preparing for this moment for longer than the Council realized, and they were about to demonstrate that there was a significant difference between what appeared to be humanity's capabilities and what those capabilities actually were. Admiral Krexoth was flying into the first military surprise of his very long life. Admiral Krexoth studied the sensor readings as the Talon's Edge approached the Proxima Centauri system. According to the displays, everything was exactly as expected. One small planetary body in orbit around the red dwarf star, with what appeared to be a modest research facility on its surface. Contact in 30 minutes. Admiral, reported his sensor officer. A mantis-like being from the Click species. I'm detecting the expected human installation. Approximately 50 structures, basic power generation, minimal defensive capabilities. Krexoth nodded with satisfaction. Standard approach pattern. We'll position ourselves in high orbit and commence bombardment. Make sure our recording systems are active. The other humans need to see every detail of what happens to those who defy the Council. The crew of the Talon's Edge went about their preparations with practiced efficiency. This was routine work for them. They had destroyed dozens of installations like this one over the centuries. The only difference was that most species surrendered before it became necessary. Admiral, the communications officer called out, we're receiving a transmission from the human facility. Oh? Krexoth's feathers ruffled with amusement. Put it through. Let's hear them beg for mercy. The main screen flickered to life, showing the face of a human female in what appeared to be a military uniform. She looked tired but determined, and her eyes held no trace of fear. This is Commander Sarah Chen of the Proxima Research Station, she said calmly. I'm addressing the approaching council vessel. Krexoth leaned forward in his command chair. Human, you are about to be destroyed as a lesson to your species. Your government's refusal to accept council authority has consequences. You have 10 minutes to evacuate any personnel you wish to save. Commander Chen's expression didn't change. Actually, Admiral, I think you might want to reconsider your approach. You're not dealing with what you think you're dealing with. The alien admiral's beak opened in what might have been laughter. Human, your entire installation couldn't damage a council shuttle, much less a heavy cruiser. Your threats are meaningless. They're not threats, Chen replied. They're facts. You've been operating under incorrect assumptions about human capabilities. We've been aware of your species' existence for much longer than you realize, and we've been preparing. Krexoth gestured dismissively with one wing. Your primitive weapons are no concern to us. In transmission. The screen went dark and the Admiral turned to his tactical officer. Begin the bombardment sequence. Target their main structures first. Sir, I'm detecting some unusual energy readings from the planet's surface, the sensor officer reported. Power levels are higher than expected for a research facility. Irrelevant, Krexoth snapped. Whatever primitive generators they're using, they won't matter in a few minutes. The Talon's Edge moved into attack position, its massive plasma cannons beginning to charge. The ship's energy shields activated automatically, though no one aboard expected to need them. That was when space around them suddenly filled with objects that hadn't been there a moment before. Admiral, the sensor officer's voice cracked with shock. Multiple contacts. Ships materializing all around us. Krexoth spun toward the main display, his eyes widening as he saw what surrounded his vessel. Dozens of human ships had appeared as if from nowhere, their dark hulls reflecting the red light of Proxima Centauri. They were smaller than the council cruiser, but there were so many of them. Impossible, he breathed. Where did they come from? Our sensors showed empty space. Unknown, sir. They're using some kind of stealth technology that our systems can't detect. Before Krexoth could issue orders, the human ships opened fire. But these weren't the primitive chemical weapons the Council intelligence had described. Beams of focused energy lanced out from the human vessels, striking the Talon's Edge's shields with devastating force. Shields at 60%, the defensive systems officer reported. How are they penetrating our barriers? More weapons fired from the human ships. These looked like simple projectiles, but they moved at incredible speeds and hit with the force of small nuclear weapons. The Council ship shuddered under the impact. Return fire, Krexoth screeched. All weapons. The Talon's Edge's plasma cannons roared to life, sending bolts of superheated energy toward the nearest human ships. But the human vessels moved in ways that defied everything the Council knew about space combat. Instead of the predictable formations used by civilized species, they darted and weaved like a pack of hunting animals. Sir, they're coordinating their attacks in real time, the tactical officer reported. I've never seen anything like this. They're sharing targeting data instantly and adjusting their formations based on our responses. Krexoth watched in growing horror as his ship's weapons missed target after target. The humans fought like no civilized species ever had. Not with honor or predictable tactics, but with cunning and creativity that was completely alien to galactic warfare. "Admiral, incoming transmission from the human commander," the communications officer announced. "Put her through," Krexoth ordered, his voice tight with shock. Commander Chen appeared on the screen again, and now she was smiling. "Admiral, you came here expecting to find a helpless research station. What you actually found was Alpha Base, our primary military installation outside the Sol system." Behind her, Krexoth could see activity that looked nothing like a research facility. Humans in combat armor moved with military precision, and screens showed tactical data that was far too sophisticated for a primitive species. "This is impossible," Krexoth said. "Our intelligence indicated that humans have barely achieved interplanetary travel." "Your intelligence was wrong," Chen replied. "We've been aware of your species for decades. We've been tracking your expansion, studying your methods, and preparing for this exact moment." On the tactical display, more human ships were appearing, not just the fighters that were already engaging the Talon's edge, but larger vessels emerging from concealment throughout the system. "You see, Admiral, humans have a saying, 'Know your enemy.' We've been watching you destroy civilizations for years. We studied your tactics, your technology, your weaknesses, and we've been building a response." Krexoth's ship shuddered again as human weapons found their mark. His shields were down to 30% and dropping fast. "The mistake you made," Chen continued, "was assuming that because we appeared primitive, we actually were primitive. What you were seeing was what we wanted you to see." "This is a trick," Krexoth protested. "Humans don't have this technology." "Actually, we do. We just developed it quietly. While you were conquering other species with demonstrations of force, we were learning from their defeats. Every species you destroyed taught us something about how to fight you." The human ships pressed their attack, and Krexoth realized with growing panic that his vessel was actually in danger. The Talon's Edge was one of the most powerful ships in the Council fleet, and it was being overwhelmed by what he had thought was a primitive species. "Your species fights like honorable warriors," Chen said. "Predictable formations, standard tactics, rules of engagement. We studied all of that, and then we decided to fight differently. You fight like animals." Krexoth spat. Chen's smile widened. "Exactly. Animals that learned how to use tools. And Admiral, you just became our prey." The Talon's Edge's shields finally collapsed under the sustained assault. Human weapons began hitting the ship's hull directly, and damage reports flooded in from all sections. "Admiral, we need to retreat," the tactical officer urged. "The ship can't take much more of this." Krexoth stared at the display showing human ships swarming around his vessel like angry insects. This wasn't how galactic warfare was supposed to work. Civilized species didn't fight like this. "All ships emergency jump to hyperspace," he ordered. "Retreat to the main fleet immediately." As the Talon's Edge limped away from Proxima Centauri, its hull scarred and its crew shaken, Admiral Krexoth tried to process what had just happened. For the first time in his long military career, a Council ship had been defeated in battle. The implications were staggering. If humans could do this to one ship, what could they do to the entire fleet? Behind them, Commander Chen watched the alien vessel flee on her tactical display. Around her, her staff began preparing for the next phase of their carefully planned response. "Signal all ships," she ordered. "Operation Hornet's Nest is complete. Time to implement Operation Swarm." The galaxy was about to learn that humanity had been preparing for war much longer than anyone had realized, and they were very, very good at it. The Council's emergency session had been called within hours of Admiral Krexoth's retreat from Proxima Centauri. In the vast circular chamber aboard their flagship, representatives from all 12 species sat in stunned silence as they watched the battle recordings. On the central holographic display, human ships moved with deadly precision around the mighty Talon's Edge. The massive Council cruiser, which had never before suffered significant damage in combat, limped away with hull breaches and failing systems. "This is impossible," declared Prime Construct Alpha 1, its crystalline form flickering with agitated light patterns. "Our calculations predicted a 99.97% probability of human surrender, following standard demonstration protocols." Ambassador Veltar floated in his command pod, his skin pattern cycling through colors that indicated deep distress. "The humans deceived us. Their true capabilities far exceed our intelligence estimates." "Deceived?" Council Speaker Thexmara, an elderly being from the gas giant dwelling atmospheric collective, spoke through a translation device that converted her chemical communications into audible speech. Or did we simply fail to understand what we were observing? Admiral Krexoth, his brilliant feathers now dulled with shame, stood before the assembly. The humans fight without honor. They use tactics that no civilized species would employ. They coordinate like a swarm intelligence, sharing information instantaneously across their entire force. Described their weapons. Ordered General Vaxtor of the silicon-based metalloid empire. Energy weapons comparable to our own, but more focused. Kinetic projectiles moving at significant fractions of light speed. And their ships? Krexoth paused, his translator struggling with concepts that had no equivalent in galactic military doctrine. They move like living creatures, unpredictable, aggressive. They attack from multiple angles simultaneously. The chamber filled with the sounds of various species communicating their alarm in their native languages. For 10,000 years, the Council had maintained order through superior technology and overwhelming force. No species had ever successfully resisted their initial demonstration of power. How many ships did they deploy? Asked Defense Coordinator Zefkai, Krexoth's superior in the Zephi military hierarchy. 47 combat vessels at Proxima Centauri, the Admiral replied. But our long-range sensors are detecting movement throughout human space. They have fleets we never knew existed. Prime Construct Alpha 1's form brightened with new calculations. If humans possess this level of military capability, why did they allow us to believe they were primitive? The answer came from an unexpected source. On the chamber's communication screen, the image of Secretary General Chen Wei appeared. The human leader looked calm and composed, as if addressing a gathering of equals rather than the supreme power in the galaxy. Honored members of the Galactic Council, she began, I believe you have some questions about recent events. Council Speaker Thexmara spoke for the assembly. Human, you have violated all known protocols of galactic civilization. Your species employed deception and unprovoked aggression against Council forces. Chen Wei's expression hardened slightly. Unprovoked? You came to our system demanding tribute, threatened to enslave our people and promised to destroy our civilization if we refused. When we said no, you immediately moved to attack our citizens. I'm curious about your definition of unprovoked. Your resistance to Council authority is unprecedented, Veltar interjected. In 10,000 years of expansion, no species has successfully defied our initial terms. Then perhaps it's time your expansion came to an end, Chen Wei replied calmly. The words sent a shock through the Council chamber. No one had ever suggested that the Council's dominion might not be permanent. You cannot stand against the full might of the Council, General Vaxtor declared. We command hundreds of worlds and thousands of ships. Yes, Chen Wei nodded. And we've been tracking every one of them for the past 15 years. Did you think we were sitting idle while you conquered our neighbors? She gestured, and the chamber's display changed to show a three-dimensional map of the galaxy. Red dots marked Council territories while blue dots showed human positions. The blue dots were everywhere, not just around Earth but scattered throughout Council space. You see, when we first detected your species, we made a decision. We could surrender immediately and join the long list of your victims, or we could prepare for the inevitable confrontation. We chose to prepare. Admiral Krexoth stared at the display in horror. You have ships positioned throughout the galaxy. How is this possible? While you were watching our obvious expansion around Earth, we were quietly establishing hidden bases in systems you had already conquered. Your own subjects helped us, by the way. Turns out a lot of species harbor some resentment about their treatment under Council rule. The implications hit the Council members like a physical blow. If humans had been operating in their territory for years without detection, their entire intelligence network had been compromised. What do you want? Council Speaker Thexmara asked, her chemical communication carrying undertones of fear. Simple, Chen Wei replied. We want you to leave. Withdraw your fleets from our territory. Stop demanding tribute from the species under your control, and recognize that your age of galactic dominion is over. Impossible, Krexoth screeched. The Council will never surrender to primitives. Chen Wei smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. Admiral, I don't think you understand your situation. While we've been having this conversation, human fleets have moved into position around every major Council installation in this sector. The display changed again, showing real-time images of human ships surrounding council stations, shipyards, and administrative centers. The vessels that had seemed to appear from nowhere at Proxima Centauri were everywhere. You have a choice, Chenwei continued. You can order your fleets to stand down and begin negotiations for an orderly transition of power, or you can try to fight. I should mention that we've been analyzing your tactics for decades. We know how you think, how you fight, and how to beat you. Prime Construct Alpha 1's form flickered rapidly as it processed calculations. The probability of successful resistance has become uncertain. More than uncertain, Chenwei said. You've spent 10,000 years fighting species that surrendered after your first demonstration of force. You've never faced an enemy that studied you, prepared for you, and decided to fight back with everything they had. Through the chamber's windows, the council members could see their own fleet hanging in space around Earth. 12 massive ships that had never been defeated in battle. But now human vessels were emerging from stealth positions all around them. How long have you been watching us? Veltar asked. Since before you knew we existed, Chenwei replied. We detected your expansion into this sector 50 years ago. We've been studying you, learning from the species you destroyed and preparing for this moment ever since. 50 years? Council Speaker Thex Mara's chemical emissions betrayed her shock. But your technology was a careful deception. We wanted you to see primitive chemical rockets and crude nuclear weapons, while we developed antimatter drives and quantum entanglement communications. We wanted you to think we were helpless while we built a fleet that could stand against yours. The council chamber fell silent, as the full scope of humanity's deception became clear. For decades, an entire species had been preparing for war while appearing completely harmless. The other species, General Vaxtor said slowly, the ones under our control. Do they know? They know, Chenwei confirmed. And many of them are ready to join us. Turns out that after centuries of slavery, a lot of civilizations are eager for a chance at freedom. On the display, new signals began appearing throughout Council space. Worlds that had been quiet under Council rule were suddenly broadcasting messages of support for the human rebellion. You have started a galactic war, Veltar said. No, Chenwei replied firmly. You started a galactic war 10,000 years ago. We're just finishing it. She leaned forward, her expression becoming steel-hard. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to order your fleets to stand down. You're going to release your hold on the species you've enslaved, and you're going to return to your home territories and stay there. And if we refuse? Krexoth demanded. Chenwei's smile returned, cold and predatory. Then you'll discover why humans became the apex predators on their homeworld. We're very good at hunting, Admiral, and you've just become our prey. The transmission ended, leaving the council chamber in stunned silence. Outside the windows, human ships continued to emerge from concealment, surrounding the once mighty council fleet. For the first time in galactic history, the council faced an enemy that had said no and meant it. The age of human submission was over. The age of human dominance had begun. And across the galaxy, on 1,000 enslaved worlds, beings looked up at the stars and dared to hope that freedom was finally possible.